On this episode of Textbook, we're talking with TJ Cochran, director of the Brown University Bookstore and brand licensing at Brown University. TJ brings over 30 years of experience in academic retail operations, spanning both leased and independent models. Over the course of his career, he has consulted or worked with more than 200 college campuses across the United States. A seasoned expert in university trademark licensing, TJ is deeply involved in the collegiate retail community. He has held active memberships in numerous industry associations, including ICBA and NACS, and has served on the board of directors for the NACS Foundation. TJ is someone who's had a profound impact on my own professional journey. He was my former regional manager and remains one of the most influential leaders in my life. We close this episode by briefly acknowledging the tragic shooting at Brown University on December 13th, 2025. On May 3rd, 2017, while I was the manager at the Dallas College North Lake Bookstore, a student named Janira Gonzalez was shot and killed just yards from our store. That shared experience shapes a short, thoughtful exchange at the end of the conversation about leadership, community, and care. As always, the views shared here are those of the hosts and our guest, and not necessarily those of any current or former employer. Let's get into it with TJ. Dr. Andy, welcome back to another episode of Textbook with Mike and Andy. So good to see you.
It's great to see you too.
Today, my career has come full circle. This is a really big episode for me. If I think about the most influential people in my life or my professional life, personal life, it doesn't really matter. Outside of my family, our guest today is in the top 3. This guest has taught me so much about what it means to be a leader, so much about how to rethink my job as a bookstore manager, who's given me the confidence to attack some of the most challenging things that I've come across, honestly set me on the path that I'm on today. Like the research, the motivation to do something amazing. This guy has been there, the cheerleader for me for now over a decade. So I'm so honored and privileged to have TJ Cochran on our podcast from Brown University, the Brown Bookstore. TJ, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, Mike, and feel the same about you, my friend. You're going to make me cry right off the beginning. Don't do that.
Well, last episode, I almost cried too. So it seems like we're just going to get emotional in these podcasts as things go on. And we have truly transformational people and people who think outside the box and do such amazing things in this industry and really lift their people up. And I think that's probably one of the most important things, one important lessons I learned from you. Really, it's about how you lead your people. And that is stuck with me for so long. Every time I was leading a team, how would TJ do this? What would TJ tell me to do? No, when I'm struggling with my emotions taking over a decision or I want to make an emotional response, TJ would say, okay, great. Now take the emotion out and just tell me the facts. And carrying that has been so helpful in my career and helpful in a lot of things that I've been doing since we first met, since you first dropped that the school owed me $30,000 from over a year ago, and then I had to go figure out how to collect it. That was my first introduction, Dr. Andy, to TJ. He hired me blind from the University of San Francisco, met him first day I walked in, and he drops the AR report in the desk and says, oh yeah, the school owes you 30 grand. You need to go get that. I'm like, how long is it? Over a year. Okay, thanks.
And there may not be any backup or documents.
No paperwork, no copies, no backup, nothing. Like, we did it, but
you did it, and you did a great job. But yeah, I remember that.
Welcome to Kingsborough. Awesome. Thank you. So TJ, for people who don't know you, that's their loss. But can you tell us how you found your way into campus retail, collegiate retail?
Yeah, sure. So it's not an exciting story, but I graduated from a small little Christian college in Berea, Kentucky, called Berea College, and graduated there in the mid-90s. And my parents were living right outside Scottsdale, Arizona. And so I moved back in with the parents and started sending out resumes. And I had 3 callbacks, and one of them was a company called Follett Higher Education. My stepfather, who once was the president of O'Call Caps and Gowns when I was in high school and middle school, was very familiar with the company because they were a customer of his. And he said, this is a company that's going really fast, a lot of opportunity. You've got some retail experience, in your young days, and this would probably be a good company to work for. And so they offered me a management training program, and I accepted it. and got a wealth of training over a year and 2 months or so, and just fell in love with it and have been doing it for now over 30 years.
So we've seen a theme of bookstore directors that started as student workers. Doesn't sound like that was your path. What were you doing in college?
I was the student in college railing against the bookstore, talking about how prices are way too high. And I was in student government, and I was saying we got to do something about the bookstore. It's ripping us off. I was that student. No lie, true story. And so my experience from college, I worked for Campus Life. So I did work for the university all 4 years I was in college. I worked for the dean of students. And so, I knew what it was like to work at a college campus. I loved working on a college campus, still do to this day. I think it's one of the greatest places you can possibly work. But yeah, I was that student. And so when I applied, that was actually weighing on me. I actually thought, what do I really want to go work for the enemy that's jacking up and ripping off students? And then I actually got to know a gentleman named David Frazier who interviewed me for the position. And I realized there was way more to this business than I possibly understood. I was being a young, snot-nosed kid who thought he knew everything and knew very little and still don't know a whole lot. But yeah, that I was that student, and completely it changed me when I got to really learn the business. And so it was a lot different than what I expected it to be.
It's interesting because you're the first guest that kind of has a similar path as me in the industry, where I came up through student government, looking at from the outside, probably being very critical of our auxiliaries but I mean, working with them on campus and then going into the industry. Made a few adjustments in my thinking about things over the years.
Yeah, same here. I mean,
Really, really great story though.
yeah, I felt like, the bookstore was, you probably don't remember stack buying, Mike, because it was probably even before your time, but there was a day that some of the wholesalers out there, they're not even longer in business, used to do what was called stack buying. At Berea, that's how they bought your textbooks. And so basically what you did is you walked up and you set your textbooks on the counter, and they would eyeball it and say dollars, right? Or whatever it might be.
No way.
And me being the brat that I was, I would pull one book out of the stack and go, okay, what is it now? And they would tell me what it is. And I'd take another one. And I go, what is it now? And then I'd do the quick math in my head and go, wait a minute, that's $220. If you add it, go back and add it up. And they would just want to get rid of me. It was like, okay, I'll give you $220. Cool. But that's the way they did stack buying back then. Obviously other companies like Follett and Barnes, they didn't do it that way, but that wasn't my experience. So that's just one example of once I learned what went into adoptions and why you paid what you did, when you paid what you did, and the timing mattered. I didn't know any of that as a student. And it completely changes your perspective when you understand there's dependencies on how much they can spend or pay you based on the demand of that textbook, and completely changed my whole opinion and perspective on everything.
For sure. The intricacies
It
on the back
matters.
end, it's not as cut and dry as, oh, you need a book, you get a book, you put it on the shelf. There's a lot that goes into it. The procurement of materials, it's definitely way more involved and detailed than the nuance in it than what some people who've never been there or haven't experienced it, what they truly understand. So that was a really cool moment, I think, for you to go from one side of, anti-bookstore to, wow, this is a lot more complicated than what I thought before. And I think what's cool for us in this conversation is you've gone from, that snot-nosed kid getting a job at the bookstore to, really climbing the ladder, if you will, store manager, regional manager with Follett. And then you made the decision to essentially kind of what appeared like a step down back to a director role. But what I think the opportunity at Brown is kind of really changed from maybe what it looked like or what it felt like before to some of the incredible stuff that you've been doing now.
Yeah, I mean, I could see why somebody's perception might be that you're going from a regional manager position to a director position, and it feels kind of like a step down. But to be honest with you, it's really moving sideways. It's not moving and almost diagonal. And I'll tell you why I say that is that running an independent store is nothing like running a lease operation. It's very, very different. It's more akin to running a small business than it is. You're more autonomous. You're making more impactful decisions at a leadership level, and things aren't being kind of like directed to you from the top down, right? And so when you're a regional manager or store director, you're in that middle level management and private industry. but a lot of decisions are made for you. You don't get to make those decisions. And I called up a friend and colleague who worked at Follett in the same position I did for a long time, a gentleman named Todd Petrie. I don't know if you know Todd or not. He somebody I highly respect and was awesome at Follett, always in one of those top three performers out there. And he had decided to leave Follett and go to run an independent store at University of Illinois. And so he was the first person I picked up the phone and called and said, "Hey, I've got this opportunity, but I want to know what it's like. How different is it?" And he's like, "It's night and day, buddy." And he goes, "The thing about it is it'll be as good as you make it because you're making the decisions. And the problem with you and I is we want it to be great and we'll kill ourselves to make it that way." And he said, so his advice was to me to like pace yourself because you're going to want to do all these things really fast and you'll burn everybody out, including yourself. So be careful because you'll have the power to do things at the pace you want to do them. And he was absolutely right. I learned real quick, 10 pages of things I remember going over with my boss saying, "These are the things I want to do. And this is the order I want to do them in." And she's just looking at me, shaking her head, just like, "Oh my goodness." And I'm like, "I don't expect to do it overnight, but I want to do it by X date." And it was pretty aggressive. And so, yeah, going into the independent world, you realize how much you get to pull the levers and at a leadership level, and you're explaining to the administration what is your vision is and what you're trying to achieve to accomplish the goals of the university. And they'll give you all the support in the world, pat you on the back, and go, "Let's do it." But then you got to go do it yourself. No one else is telling you how to do it. You're the expert, and there's a lot of pressure that comes with that, right?
Right.
So I'm not diminishing the role in the lease side either. It's very different. There's other pressures and other things. You're building relationships on campus and you're representing a third party. So there's a different type of pressure on you, but it's more operations and less merchant skills. And you have to be a merchant and an entrepreneur in some fashion and always looking forward and always building that vision and explaining the vision and getting the buy-in, and you're truly leading a team in a different way than when you're on the just purely operation side of it.
So in that vein, you're talking about the speed in which that you can make decisions and go about things. Can you, and I know that we've had this conversation before and you and I've talked about retail and what the future looks like. Can you talk a little bit about what you now see as the future of collegiate retail and what the next frontier looks like on college campuses or in your store?
Yeah, sure. So what I would say is retail in general is going to change. And so academic retailing is going to follow suit. It's just inevitable. You have an economy that's really bifurcating into two areas. And it's impacting retail. You've got people who are impulse purchasers that are now trying to save disposable income, right? So they're making price conscious decisions and their behavior is changing. And so if you're not about convenience and price, you're going to be in trouble unless you really focus on what I call experiential retail. And not to say you can't be both, because you can, but I think most people are going to shop your store because you give them a reason to be there. And it's got to be a fun shopping experience and something that's meaningful to that person. And that's going to be done all around a lot of promotions and events. And you're going to see a lot more event people in the retail space in the future. You're going to see that's a growth market. If you like to promote and do events, you're going to be able to have a pretty good career in the world of retail in the coming years, because I think that's going to be the draw to drive traffic to the store. And the campus shop is so perfect for that type of retail. And the reason why is you serve such a diverse group of people. You've got fans and alumni and students and faculty and staff and visitors that come to campus. There's such a wide range of people to cater to, and they all are going to have their own reason to be there. And so you've got to build events around that and build those promotions and drive that traffic. And in some cases, you're going to take the store to them. And there's already, independent stores out there do great jobs, especially around sports programs, being there during big venues and big events. And it's all about that fun and that experience. And what can you add to that experience and the nostalgia that, for alumni or, an excited student that's about to start as a freshman. There's so many things you can build on there. And so I think academic retailing will be able to build that experiential retail. And you're going to see that there's going to be a lot about this in the coming years. On the convenience side, there's a lot of stores that run convenience stores, right? There's a lot of campus stores that have locations all over campus. And that's all going to be about how fast can you get someone in and out, and are you competitive, in the pricing in that area. And I'll tell you, even brands are following suit on this. You're going to see that even products are going to bifurcate, where if you have a good, better, best model, you're going to carry a lot more good and a lot more best and a lot less better, because those types of brands in the middle and retailers that kind of cater to that demographic, you're going to see that shrink over time.
We talked with Andy Dunn at Grand Canyon, the Lope Shops,
I know Andy,
and
a good guy.
he said he talked a lot about, really creating that experience because they don't have course materials in their store, so they don't have the typical driver dirt rush. But he talked a lot about how they're using their marketing calendar, the planning calendar to, create events and things to drive traffic in. So is there anything in particular at Brown that you've been doing or that you want to do to create that experiential retail experience?
Well, I mean, Brown, we do things that are very specific to Brown. And then there's things that I think Brown does that a lot of campuses do, like grad fairs, for example. Grad fairs are a big event on campus. Many colleges do them. I'd say probably even most colleges do them. We make a big celebration out of it, and it draws thousands of customers in less than 6 hour period. And we do that outside the store. We actually do a big event, usually outside the location, or at least the way we've done it the past few years. But there's a lots of things you can do it around. We have the rival Harvard Brown football game. It's a big draw every year. We have alumni that come back to campus. We have commencement. Those are the staples that I think all of us experience. Some colleges have like a class ring ceremony where they open up their class rings together, and that if you ever seen one of those, that's a pretty cool experience. They stand up and turn the ring over and all that kind of stuff. It's a really, really neat experience. I'm not saying we don't have that at Brown, but I know there are colleges. And so I look at things from, you have to remember, I've been affiliated with 200 colleges, over 200 colleges in my career that I have worked with in some capacity somewhere. So when I think of things, I'm not thinking of just in terms of what we've done at Brown. There's so many examples I could give you across 2-year schools, 4-year schools, small schools, big schools, state schools, private schools. But there's a lot of interesting things I've seen colleges do that are unique to them. You've just got to kind of bottle or the essence of the university during those events and what makes them special, and kind of market it that way, and you'll get the draw. You'll get the draw. People want to come in the store and shop your store.
So TJ, we're looking at experiential retail, all these fun things that are going on, but what is that quintessential Brown experience that we're going to get at your store? What is one event? What is the funnest event? What is something that just stands out that you could share with us?
Well, one that I love is ADOC. And ADOC is an acronym for A Day in College Hill. It's when you invite early acceptance students and students that still have not committed but have been invited. And I'd say there's about 800 students that come to campus over a couple of weeks period. And to me, you talk about excitement. You got the parents coming in, they're proud. Some of the students are still trying to decide where it is they want to attend. And they visit all kinds of campuses, and you get to interact, and there's all kinds of events on campus around that. And I always really love being out on the floor, talking to parents and talking to the kids. And for me, I have two examples I could give you. Is we had a mom with her son, and they had been to many campuses, and she was sitting there kind of telling me where she'd been and all the different stores and what they were like and how much she really liked their assortment and how nice campus is. And she was just going on and on. The whole time she's talking, her son is kind of standing in one of these full-length mirrors, trying on like hoodies and the hat. He's not really paying attention to us at all, but he's trying on different things. And she's, telling me what the trip's been like and how great the weather's been and yada, yada, yada. And she keeps going, and he keeps trying on different stuff. And finally, and she says to me, he hasn't decided yet. We're thinking about here for this reason and here for that reason, whatever. And finally, after a few minutes of this, he turns around and he looks at his mom and he goes, "I've decided." And she goes, "Oh, you're going to get that hat and that hoodie?" And he goes, "No, where I want to go to college." And she's like, "Really? Where?" He goes, "Brown." And she looks flabbergasted. Like you can tell this, she did not expect it. And she goes, "Why?" And he goes, "It feels right." And, that made my hair on the back of my neck stand up and gave me goosebumps, because I was interacting a real authentic moment where a kid is making a decision that's going to impact the rest of his life. In some small little way, I had a little bit to do with the feeling that he had, right? And every college has that essence. And if you could figure out a way to exude that, that it makes all the difference in the world, and especially when people are experiencing whatever they're experiencing in your store, right? I had another example of a gentleman that was walking around. He had this big medal around his neck. And I just kind of walked up and I was like, "Hey, what's that?" And he's like, "This is a Congressional Medal of Honor." And I was like, "I've never seen one of those." So I get a little closer and I said, you got the Congressional Medal of Honor?" And the gentleman was in his late 70s, maybe early 80s. And yeah, he goes, "I was a Navajo code talker in World War II in the Pacific. And for my actions in the field, they gave me this." And I mean, again, I got goosebumps. I was like, I've never seen one of these. I've never met someone with this experience. And he did not want to talk about himself at all because he was with his grandson who just got accepted to Brown. And all he wanted to talk about was how great his grandson is and how proud he was of his grandson. Again, another great moment. I could give you many of them, and we don't have the time, but it's those types of things that to me make working in a college store on a college campus, regardless, special and makes me want to do what I do every day. But we all have to kind of step back and recognize those moments happen on our college campus and our stores. And then what do we do to facilitate to make that even better?
Those are incredible stories. Just powerful. It's an amazing to experience those type of things. It can happen any day. Any day you could have those moments, and
You never know what you're gonna see, and that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, just always on a college campus, you get those amazing moments. And I think that's one of the things that really makes it special to work on a college campus. So we talked a little about experiential retail and how you're looking at that as part of the future. You've been involved in course materials for a while. As you look ahead, what's the future look like for you for course materials?
Yeah, so yeah, I kind of started off as a textbook guru. That was kind of my area. Actually, most of the colleges when I was a regional manager, when I started off, were community colleges. So 80% of our business was in the textbook world, writing course materials. It's a lot different now than it was then, but it's evolved a lot over time, and it's going to continue to evolve. That what's happening in course materials is such a drastic change that in some ways I feel sad because I kind of liked the way it used to be, but I understand the evolution. I understand why it's going the direction. And I think it's important to and be a realist that it has to kind of go the way it's going. And so what is that? Well, what I would say is textbooks was print material and a delivery mechanism to pass information on to somebody. And I'm going to be honest with you. We like to think in higher education, we have a big influence on how course materials are delivered and what's chosen and all that. But it's really K through 12 that drives that market. It's not higher ed. How a student has their modes of learning, the foundation of how they learn, it's all been established by the time they get to you in college. And so if they've been using a print book from K through 12, they're going to expect to use a print book. And that's what they're going to be comfortable with when they get to college. If they've been using a Chromebook since elementary school, then that's their experience and how they like to learn. And so as K through 12 has evolved and developed different course materials that are integrated in the classroom and learning management systems, you've seen college kind of follow suit, right, over time. And that's been going on for 20 years. But now what you're seeing, especially with the emergence of artificial intelligence, other types of software, that integration in the classroom is just becoming more prevalent, and it will continue to become even more prevalent in the future. So when you look at us in the course materials world, how are we delivering that content is going to change over time, right? And some people say I'm very pessimistic, and I don't. I've talked to current presidents of companies that are out there in the publishing world and the lease world and CEOs. And I had this debate with them, and they don't agree with me in a lot of ways, and they have good reason not to agree with me. But I think that the relevancy of the bookstore is going to be in jeopardy if we don't make ourselves stay relevant and have something to do with how course materials are delivered and incorporate the bookstore into that process as it continues to evolve. How people are going to learn, how people are going to teach are going to change, and course materials are going to follow suit on that too. And so the person I feel who's cutting edge in this area, and I think him, Mike's Jason Morgan. over at UC Davis. I read something he wrote not long ago talking about how they are wading into this new evolution of how AI is going to impact course materials and what the bookstore is going to do in their regards to stay relevant and involved in that. And so it's great. If you haven't had him as a guest yet, he would be a great guest to get in to talk about that. And he knows that way better than I do. But I think that's what it's going to take, is that kind of involvement and having the expertise in your store. I'm going to be honest with you. A lot of stores kind of thrown their hands up in the air and said, we're out of the course material business and we're leasing that part, but we're going to run our own campus shop. And the stores that have done that are really kind of at the mercy of what those providers are doing.
So we just talked to Aaron Ochoa.
Aaron, yeah.
Yeah, I've talked to Jason many times. Visionary, I don't think is strong enough of a word, but that trickles down to his team. And, having the opportunity to talk to Aaron and some of the work that's coming out of the UC Davis stores in terms of new metrics, new ways to think about the way the bookstore can impact the institution. It was incredible to be in the room listening to him talk.
And if you're in this world, you should listen.
Absolutely. I kind of went overboard with the legendary status of UC Davis, but it's true. They completely
That
transformed.
reputation is well earned and deserved. There's no doubt about it.
I mean, they've completely transformed how we think about course materials and think about the bookstore as an access point and its impact on student success. But if we're talking about course materials, and all the points that you made are valid, and in the research that I've done and in the opportunity I've had to walk in and out of rooms across this industry, there has to be something that changes. Since 2015, access programs, course by course or campus wide, have made, I think, a significant impact, right? We've seen them grow. The data from my work and the work of others is showing that it is making a positive impact in the classroom, but that doesn't necessarily address the acquisition delivery, I think, that you're talking about. I mean, it does, right? We're moving students from the acquisition process, I think, are important for ensuring access on day one. But how do access programs evolve, right? We went from print is the only thing you can get. And then in 2010, brick and mortar rental launched. And then brick and mortar rental kind of faded, and then access programs came into existence, and they had like this hockey stick growth for 8 to 10 years. But what it feels like, looking across industry, that's kind of flattened, right? So where in your mind, right, you've been part of trying to get institutions to adopt an access program. What do you think is kind of like the next thing? Like, have you thought about like, where do we evolve in course materials from access programs to the next thing? I think that's $1 million question.
Yeah. And there's a lot of different roads this could go down, right? It really depends on a lot of different factors. One is how the publisher is going to approach this, right? Because they've got their strategies and they're competing against each other and they're trying to get that adoption on campus for their materials, and they're going to come up with their solutions, and they're going to continue to develop and build on those integrations they have with all the various campus learning management systems, right? So a lot of what we're going to do in our industry is react to what their strategy is. I think their strategy will continue to evolve. And as there's kind of a race to the bottom on pricing, as they compete against open educational resources and just shareware and all kinds of other startups that come into the market that are more software oriented and building interactive kind of learning modes, the publishers are going to react to that, and they're going to be price conscious, and they're going to continue to try to get those adoptions and keep their market share. And it wouldn't surprise me if you see more institutional licenses out there, more libraries built that are tailored to the university, where the university can just purchase a license and have everything they need from that particular publisher and carry a lot of different institutional licenses and really integrate with the systems in a way so that the DM instruction or the digital learning center on campus or the library in some cases is really kind of being the go-between the academic and the content delivery, right? And so my advice is every bookstore is out there looking at how they feel like their campus will evolve. If licenses become available, is it going to be the bookstore that's going to be the stakeholder for that? Or is it going to be the library? Is it going to be somebody else? Is it going to be a combination of all those things? And start building your strategy now about how you want to be involved and what the college ultimately wants to do. And I think that's one direction it could possibly go.
And there's two thoughts out of that. We've in course drills for like the last 20 years, we've been promised this digital revolution. We keep saying digital is coming, digital coming, digital is coming. It kind of feels like it's here with access programs being digital first. There is a higher prevalence of digital materials being delivered. And ultimately, if the big three or big four publishers decided we were going digital tomorrow, we'd go digital tomorrow.
Yeah, there's no stopping it.
If they decided that, listen, we're no longer printing, and we've seen publishers close their printing presses in multiple places. They've gone from 10 across the country to like 4 because we're not using as many physical textbooks as 10 years ago. But that piece that you talked about with institutions directly integrating with publishers, I think is a really interesting thing, because the bookstore has been that central distribution point in traditional higher education for course materials. But what you alluded to, or maybe you said directly, is, why is the Office of Learning Instruction or Design, why are they not taking over and vertically integrating with the major publishers and just bypassing the bookstore? Is there an advantage to that? I don't know, because the bookstore does have the experience in working those relationships, but what's that look like?
Well,
How did that change?
I'll tell you, I can tell you from my personal experience, where the bookstore is involved as the central hub, it goes smoother for everybody because you have an expert on campus who understands those relationships with publishers, who understands the course material market, and you have someone locally on your campus that's an expertise you can go to, right? I think that publishers that are here whenever they're visiting or making their calls and their rounds convince a lot of faculty members that product is what they're looking for to deliver the content and for their curriculum. And sometimes the bookstore gets forgotten in that process until after the decision's made. And where you have campuses where there's a lot of campus outreach with faculty by the bookstore or the campus shop, whoever's managing it, that you're going to find the more interaction you have with faculty and the more you're involved in that process, the more they're going to come to you as that expertise and not just rely on what they're told. I find also that publishers, when you were saying that some publishers will find a way to be involved and do that integration and so forth and having those discussions, that there is so many different publishers with so many different plugins that the dean of instruction or the digital learning center, whoever's managing that, has to manage all these LTI plugins, right?
Right.
And so they don't want to do that. And by no means do they want to do that. And that's where the bookstore also has some ability to come in and leverage a relationship with a vital source or whoever is your digital partner in delivering that digital content. My take is you really just want to work with one platform so students learn one platform and faculty learn one platform, and the support staff and the digital learning center only have to deal with that one platform, right? And it just streamlines everything and makes it easier for everybody. But if you don't have someone who has the expertise to step up and own that and say, I can help you achieve this, and I can be the owner of making sure that everything falls in line and we support faculty with those LTI plugins and support your department, it gets a little chaotic. It's kind of the wild, wild west is what it turns into. And so that's why I always talk about relevancy and your expertise. You got to go out there and do a really good job selling yourself and what it is you provide the campus as an added value in that respect.
So I think we're talking a little about the store's role on a campus here. As we kind of begin looking at that, stores are being pulled in multiple directions, auxiliaries are being pulled in multiple directions in general. And there's always that balance between mission versus profit. How do you see that working for your store and in the industry in general?
Yeah, I call it the identity crisis of a bookstore or a campus shop, right? Every time I've ever had my first conversation with a business contact on the lease side, or when I interviewed for a job when I came to Brown, it was the first question I asked is, what's more important to you? You want to be mission based? Is it about student success? Is it about being charitable? Or are you really dependent on the revenues of the bookstore as a profit center on campus? If you had to say which is more important to you, which is it? Because what I'm going to do as a leader in the store is build my strategy around what is important to you to achieve those goals. Now, I can be profitable and still be charitable, right? There are ways that, but what I can't have you do is tell me that I don't have a high enough margin and making enough money on textbooks and then turn around and talk about how textbooks in the bookstore are too expensive and we need to lower prices, right? there has to be realistic expectations as me as a leader in the store to me to achieve those things. And you can't have your cake and eat it too sometimes. And I don't know that we all do a great job explaining that to the administrators we report to. We have to have frank and honest dialogue with people saying, here are my challenges. I can be this or I can be that, and I can be a little bit of both. But I can't give away the world and at the cost of profits, and also lower the prices across the board and do all these services that you expect of me because I don't have enough money for all the payroll. You have to have those difficult conversations with people. And so I started off that way. I'm like, okay, tell me what is important to you and let me tell you how you can achieve that, but understand there's trade-offs in that, and I think there's colleges that go through a pendulum swing in that regard too. I think there's colleges that are set up to be mission-based and they find out they need those revenues and they have to kind of shift the other direction. And then a whole new administration comes in with a whole new different viewpoint about how things in the role of the bookstore is. And it can shift right back to being more charitable and more conscious about student success and making sure that, they're out there with all these added value services that have a cost to the store, especially in labor. And so you kind of got to know that. You got to have that feel and you got to constantly kind of check yourself. Is that where we are? Is this what the expectation is? Do I need to pivot and change my strategy a little bit to make sure I'm meeting the objectives of the university and fulfilling that mission?
I think one of the challenges for me as a bookstore manager was how to have some of those difficult conversations, like that confrontation. Sometimes it can be sort of confrontational. I mean, I remember as a store manager, I'd make business decisions and I would tell you or any other regional, just email me my write-up. Like, I don't care. Like, I did what I did. And that's the way that's
I
going to be.
remember you ever doing that.
Just sign it. Don't bother coming to tell me that I got written up. Just email it. I'll sign it and send it back. So, but for some store managers and some directors, they're not sure how to internalize some of the fortitude maybe necessary to go and have some of those difficult conversations or to fight, even though they may know that it's the right thing, but that's hard to go to your boss and have those conversations. For you, I know a lot of it has been built over, I don't want to say this out loud, but decades of experience.
Thanks, Mike.
In the market. But if there's a store manager listening that's like, man, I absolutely need to do that, but I don't know how to do it, or I don't know where to start. Do you like have personal resources that you go to, like maybe an author that you've read that's like, this guy has really helped me, or this person has really helped me think about it? Or do you lean on something like one of the industry associations that you're a part of to get some learning or teaching, or like anything out there that you think someone could go to as a resource to maybe help them think about it a little differently?
I don't know about resource. I think, I was that way because I was emulating people who taught me, right? I worked for a gentleman for 16 years named Donald Savicki, who had no problem with confrontation. And I say that with all due respect and love and affection for the man. I would have gone through a wall for him. He was so great, and a great mentor. But I understood that you had to have the conversation because at the end of the day, if you don't, the results are going to be not what it's expected. And you're just going to put yourself in a very precarious situation in the end, trying to explain yourself. So if you don't have the conversation up front and to say, this is what we're going to do, or tell me what you want to do. And if you don't have that, then there is an expectation that's not spoken out loud. And at the end, you're going to be going, but this, but that happened, but this happened. And they're going to say, but you didn't tell me that was going to happen. I didn't know that up front. And so I just think we have to see our way through it. I think that's from a poem, Robert Frost poem. You got to see your way through it because you're in it, and there's no anything else you can do but move forward and just be very candid. So I would say, from my perspective, I just emulated the people that I learned from, and I'm sure there's some great resources out there. Definitely in the independent world, we all communicate with each other, right? We all know each other for the most part. And so you network, you get to know others, and that's where you bounce things off others. You say, hey, I've got this issue. Have you ever had this issue? Or what would you do in this circumstance? And there's a lot of us that are tight knit and we speak to each other all the time. And, at least somebody out there has had experience dealing with that. And I think we do a great job kind of reaching out and supporting each other in this market.
Now, if there's any store manager that's in an independent store and they don't feel like they have they're not connected, they should feel free to reach out to anybody. Like,
absolutely.
In the independent market, you're going to be there to support any store manager running an independent store.
You're not alone. If you feel alone, let me tell you, you're not alone. You just got to pick up the phone or send some emails out. And you got regional associations, you got NACS, ICBA, LSG, NEBC. I mean, there's the wealth of people out there with a lot of experience that you can lean on to advise you and help you. And those associations have a wealth of different resources available to you too. And NACS University, ICBA has all kinds of content and ability to help. I don't know how many times I've emailed John Bibbo and just said, John, I got this issue. Can you help me? And he's been incredible as a support. There's just so many people out there that will help you.
So the message is just pick up the phone and call somebody, and that person will answer. Call TJ. He will always answer the phone.
Yeah,
He'll
I'm happy to help.
Great. So that kind of moves me into a thought, because you've been on both sides of the coin, right? You've been in the lease space, and then you've been independent. So when we're thinking about, lease prevention feels like a bad word, because in some instances, lease might be the right thing and sometimes it's not. But I know that you've been in conversations, or you've had conversations around what would it look like if Brown had to go lease, right? And you haven't gone lease and you're not going to go lease. But those conversations can be real and they can be scary. So what do you think really are some of the most important things that independent store managers or directors can do to potentially prepare for that conversation? Or what can they do to establish the importance of the bookstore being independent on campus?
Yeah, so you're right. I've seen it from both perspectives. I've transitioned stores from independent to lease, and I've helped stores go the other direction as just kind of guidance and help on the sidelines. Um, and stores have to do, or campuses have to do, what's best for them. But what I find is the most common thread that stores find themselves even considering this is one of the following: either you have a single point of failure in your store where the person who's in leadership has been there a very long time and they're about to retire or leave for whatever reason. And when they do, there's this big giant void they're leaving behind, and no real clear indication who within the store, if anybody, is ready to step up and be the leader of the store, with developed and coached to the point where they're ready to be the next person in, right? And I think you get administrators who recognize that and they panic a little bit, right? They're like, I don't know the right questions to ask. I don't know the right resources to go to. How do I find somebody who's the right person? I don't even feel like I know where to start. Quite frankly, at least providers out there are very good at their job, and they know that's a vulnerability, and they know it when they see it, and so they start kind of making those inroads on that campus. That's shame on the store leadership for letting that happen, right? We shouldn't let that happen. There should be succession planning. There should be coaching and development, and encouraging people to keep evolving and developing in their career. And it worries me because I look around the room and I used to be the youngest guy in the room, right? I started in this business when I was 22 years old. And now I look around and I'm one of the older guys in the room. And there's not enough young people, in my opinion. But I would say a big piece of that is succession planning and making sure that the store is ready to backfill positions. And it doesn't just have to be the store director. It's all leadership positions throughout the store should have that plan. What if this person is to leave? What are we going to do? Right. So I think that's one. I think two is investment in the store. You should always be constantly trying to improve the store and have money set aside to make those investments. It could be cosmetic or it could be construction, whatever needs to be done, but constantly reinventing yourself over a period of time and not getting stagnant and stale and tired looking and run down. It needs that level of investment at some point, or it's going to be a bad reflection on the campus. And people are kind of going to look at the store and go, there's this great Barnes and Noble store up the road, and there's this great Follett store, and it looks so great. And they make this investment. What if we look like that? I'd like to look like that. And the truth is, you don't have to be leased to do that. You just have the right plan in place to make those investments happen. So I'd say that's the aesthetics of the store can cause people to kind of have a different perception of how it's doing. Third is you have a lot of people out there in a bookstore that are so task saturated and doing so much with less these days that they get stuck in their four walls and they can't go out and do enough campus outreach. And they don't build a lot of relationships. And that's detrimental in ways I can't even begin to describe, because when someone says, well, let's consider this, how many allies do you have out there saying great things about you? Right. And, I think that it's such a time investment that a lot of places just don't have the time to spend to go out there and do those extra things. And it starts to break down the positive perception of the store. It's not like people don't want to do it. It's just that, like, how do I fit it in with all the other things that are expected of me? And so I think campus outreach is crucial, and we have to find the time somehow.
Right, right. I think those are great messages. Succession planning, the appearance of your store, and trying to figure out how to reduce your role as a taskmaster to get outside of those four walls, either you as a director or your course materials manager or somebody, getting out on campus
Do you
to.
remember that exercise I used to do with managers back in the day? You probably don't. It's been a long time. It's been more than 10 years.
Yeah.
So I used to ask all the managers, get a hierarchy of your faculty and staff organization, the school you serve, and take a highlighter and highlight in green everybody that you would consider very friendly to the
Yes.
bookstore.
Yes.
And then I would say yellow, you don't know. And then orange, you don't have the greatest relationship with that person.
Right. I
And I
remember
said,
I remember this now very
right.
clearly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I would say, how much green do you have on that chart and how much yellow and then how much orange do you have on there? And that's an indication of what people think of the store. And you need to turn as much of that page to green as you possibly can. And that makes all the difference.
Yeah. That's been huge. And that's generally the advice that I give. You need to get out there and you need to know who's there and who are your allies and who do you need to turn to understand what's going on in the bookstore. That's an excellent advice for any store manager that's out there right now.
Okay, TJ, this has been a great conversation, and we've talked a lot about the future, and we've talked a lot about where the industry has come from, and we've talked a lot about what you're doing at Brown. But at some point, we all retire, and I don't know what your retirement plans are or anything like that. So the question has nothing to do with any impending thing that I know about that other people don't. Just want to put that out there in case your boss is listening or something like that. Well, what are the things that you want to do before you ride off into that sunset? What are the things that you want to accomplish in the industry at Brown before you retire? What are those big things?
Yeah. I mean, in my current situation, I've got kind of a lot of things going on that I want to carry out. Obviously, there's a lot I want to do to the space physically. There's a lot of things we want to do systems wide. There's more we're doing with staff and development. I won't go into all of that, but there's definitely a list of things that I want to accomplish before I was to retire. And if my boss is out there listening, no, I'm not retiring anytime soon. I've got some gas in the tank, so don't be nervous. But yeah, I guess the thing that I want to do is see through, however, to the end or until I'm done, how much more change is going to come. What's artificial intelligence going to do to this market? I just want to figure out and see how much more change is going to happen and be a part of that, and then make what a little difference I make in that in the future. Um, Anybody that knows me knows I'm full of opinions and I'm not shy to give them. And I'm not always been right. I'll admit when I'm wrong, but I just kind of I'm excited about what does the future look like and just kind of going along for the ride. I'm in it for the journey.
Well, it's really great getting to hear about your journey today, and I really enjoyed being here for this
It's nice meeting you,
conversation.
Andy.
So
Thank you
it
for,
really was nice meeting
yeah.
you. And it gives me a lot of insight on where Dr. Mike came from. It's kind of like the origin story. We kind of
He
have this
gives me
like
way
Star
too much credit.
Wars
He gives me
prequel
way too
kind of
much
thing
credit,
going
Andy.
on here. I see a lot of him and you and him. And to me, it was just really interesting to get to hear you talk, because it's a lot of things that I've heard Dr. Mike say over the time. So I can see where he's got in it. I can see you were a great mentor to him. So I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
So TJ, we didn't get this in the beginning because the conversation was really flowing and I didn't want to interrupt it with this. But I think it's really important for me, at least, having personally experienced this, to acknowledge the tragic events of December 2025 at Brown. I personally had an active shooter in a shooting incident on my campus here in Dallas, yards from the bookstore. So I've lived it. I've experienced it with my staff. And I know that it's only a couple months away, so we don't really need to get into details. But I really wanted to ask, how are you doing? How is your team doing? I know, again, been through the emotions that we go through, they last a long time. It's been almost 10 years. And, I still think about it, every time the calendar turns. So how are you doing? And then just, can you give us a little idea of like how your team really has stepped up in the aftermath to support the Brown community?
Yeah, sure. I can talk a little bit about it. When I grew up in the South, I grew up mostly in Virginia and North Carolina, a little bit outside New Orleans. Anybody from New Orleans is like, you don't say New Orleans if you're from New Orleans. I'm not from there, but I lived there for a bit. And so I can tell you that in that culture that I grew up in, when there was a tragedy with your neighbors, people came together and supported each other. And, you do the little things for your neighbor. You might bring them food. You might take out their trash. If they've got kids, you'd watch the little ones for them so that they could deal with the important things and go through the grief and cope with what they were going through. And so that sense of community is so important, and helping people get through whatever they've experienced, whatever tragic moment that is so important. And I can say that I'm really proud to be part of a community that did the exact same thing here at Brown. How the community came together and has worked together to really support people who've been impacted by this. Also, in the culture I was raised in, is we don't help people and brag about it. I have a hard time talking about things that we do for people, as I don't want it to come across the wrong way. What I will say is the team at the store, I'm very proud of them because they all got together in some small way, tried to help by making sure that students that were impacted um, had some essentials they got separated from, during the events. And so we wanted to make sure that they had what they needed in the aftermath, and they didn't have to worry about those things. And so say that they followed suit with that exact experience that I had growing up. And I couldn't be more thankful and proud of what they've done and how the community's responded. So as Forrest Gump said, that's about all I have to say about it.
Thank you so much. No, our thoughts are with you and your team and in the Brown community. So let's wrap this on a positive note. I am so thankful that you're here. This is a really big moment for me. You can say I'm giving you too much credit. Fundamentally, moving to Brooklyn, I'm just a dumb hillbilly from New Hampshire. I don't know anything, but coming, that moment of coming to Brooklyn and working for you, and then moving to Pennsylvania with you, it changed me. It really helped me become the leader, the operator, the person that I wanted to be, or that I didn't even know that I could become. And the research would never have happened without you. I'll never forget you saying, I go to this meeting and trying to talk about this access program, or it was called Include Ed back then. And, like our faculty or our administration wants to hear about efficacy, but all I can talk about is cost savings. And I remember sitting in the store, looking around and going, I'm around course tours all day. I need a dissertation topic. Why don't I pick this? And that completely changed. Like it completely changed my trajectory and the opportunities that I've had. So this is like a dream come true, like to be able to have you here and to have you see what I've been able to do over the last 10 years. And, whether or not that you accept that you are a large part of that, it doesn't matter to me because you are. And I'm thankful every day that I took that ridiculous move to Brooklyn.
From San Francisco to Brooklyn. Man, what were you thinking?
I honestly don't know. Part of my soul died there that will never get back, but it made me a better person. It made me a better store manager. It made me a better human. So as we wrap up, man, thank you so much for everything that you've done for me. Thank you for being here. And thank you for everything that you continue to do for the industry. You're a legend, and I will always be thankful that I know you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Mike. Your success is your success, though, buddy. All I was doing was trying to be lead blocker for you to not, score. So that was my role, and you took the football and ran with it. So that's your success.
Thank you so much, boss. I appreciate you, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to Textbook. If something you heard today stays with you, take it back to your own campus and feel free to share it with your colleagues or friends. We'll see you next time.